All right, well, it's 7:01. We have a quorum, so I'm going to proceed. This is the October meeting of the Mira Mesa Community Planning Group. We'll go through the agenda. First thing on the agenda is non-agenda public comment. Is there anyone who has a non-agenda public comment tonight? Becky Raff.
Good evening, planning group members. I wanted to share some information about the outcome of the Community Planners Committee to the city regarding their 2020 Municipal Code update. Members of the Community Planners Committee represent 50 citywide planning groups. Planning group members and their CPC representatives spend countless hours considering projects and then providing feedback to the city that is uniquely tailored to the needs of local planning areas. In August, the CPC had the opportunity to review and vote on the 2020 Municipal Code update. After careful consideration, planning group representatives approved 44 of the 46 updates. However, they strongly opposed the item to reduce the 10-day CEQA appeal period to 5 days. Representatives clearly described the problems this would create for community members and businesses in their respective planning group areas. A mere 5 days would be inadequate to find out, understand, study, and respond to a project that could forever change the environment and character of their neighborhoods and interfere with long-term community plans. Unfortunately, when the update was heard by the planning commissioners, they voted to disregard the CPC's recommendation. These updates were heard by the Land Use and Housing Committee last week. Unfortunately, they also voted to ignore community concerns. The CPC's unanimous vote, the CPC chair, and 6 knowledgeable community members pointed out these concerns. At a minimum, community members deserve an explanation as to why public concerns were not even worthy of acknowledging. The next stop for the 2020 Municipal Code updates will be the City Council, where the decision could be codified. Please let your City Council representative hear from you and encourage them to be more respectful. Valuable feedback city authorized planning groups and their representatives provide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Becky. I see we have Luis Polera here, who's our City Council's councilman's representative. Maybe you could take that back to Chris Kate. I have one more, Kathy Lippett.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. As a public health practitioner, I'd like to share some information for those of you who want to prevent children and teens from being lured into using flavored tobacco or marijuana products. Big Tobacco has been targeting young people with flavored tobacco products like mint, mango, blueberry, marshmallow, etc., especially in minority and low-income communities. Their marketing is largely responsible for the epidemic of youth use of flavored products in e-cigarette devices or other tobacco products. Paid signature gatherers are collecting signatures throughout the state and the city to overturn this ban. Many deceitful signature gatherers have been found putting up signs designed to appeal to potential petition signers, such as ban vape flavors killing our youth, or even recall Governor Newsom. Sometimes what signers were led to believe they were signing is switched out for the referendum paid for by the R.J. Reynolds Company to overturn the flavor ban. The tobacco industry has made huge profits addicting young people to these products. And if the industry gathers enough signatures, the law will not go into effect January 1st. If Big Tobacco puts a measure on a future ballot, the industry will again attempt to mislead and misinform voters and lobby electeds with a friendly and reasonable sounding title and summary designed to allow them to continue profiting from selling flavored tobacco products to addict children. Signature gatherers often claim they're saying only what they are told to say. Please remember that they're paid $8 to $15 per signature. The average voter would likely never sign a petition with a sign reading, "Please help the tobacco industry addict another generation of tobacco users with child-friendly flavorings." Hence the deceitful tactics. Please don't fall for this smoke and mirrors trick. And please don't sign these petitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other non-agenda public comment? Luana?
Yeah, hi. Just to segue off of what Kathleen said, thank you so much. You actually stole my thunder, so I will make this brief for the planning committee. Tobacco use is a huge problem that we need to address. And as parents, it's our responsibility to protect our youth. As a member of an underrepresented community, the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community here in San Diego, we are making strides to address the high prevalence and tobacco use among Asian communities, as well as Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities. We often live in multi-unit housing. We often have multi-generational families in one home. And when one person smokes in the home, everybody smokes in the home. So we really need to work on health equity when it comes to smoking now that we find ourselves in this COVID era. We are already a highly compromised community, and I would love to see a smoke-free multi-unit housing policy sometime in the near future, especially for those of us who live in apartment homes, condominiums, and sun townhouses. So I would urge you folks to kind of look into what that looks like within your own backyards. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other non-agenda public comment tonight? All right, then we'll proceed with the agenda. Modifications to the agenda. The only one I have is I'm going to defer my report of the chair until after we've heard from the mayoral candidates. Anyone else have any changes? All right, then we will proceed. The adoption of the minutes is the next thing on the agenda. The minutes were sent out to all planning group members, also posted on the website. Are there any changes to last month's minutes? All right, hearing none, the minutes are approved as written. Okay, so we are pleased that both mayoral candidates have agreed to come and talk to us tonight about planning issues. We arranged to have Todd Gloria come here first, and he's here. I don't see Barbara Bree yet, but she should be along before too long. What we asked them to do is to talk specifically about planning issues. We have them for 15 minutes each on the agenda. We don't have a really tight schedule tonight, so I'm not going to send any stopwatches, and if it goes over a little bit, that's fine. But let's proceed. Todd, Gloria, you're on.
Jeffrey, thank you so much. And while you're not going to be harsh on the stopwatch, I want to just acknowledge it. Most of you probably spent your whole day on Zoom, and the last thing you need is a politician going on and on Zoom. But I truly appreciate the chance to come and just check in with the Mira Mesa Planning Committee. And right off the bat, I want to say I appreciate the uncompensated service that you give to your city. You do this work, I think, for the same reason that I'm running for mayor. We all care deeply about the city. We want it to be as good as it possibly can be for ourselves and for our families and for future generations. And to the extent that that is what unites us this evening, thank you so much for what you do, and thanks for giving me some of your time tonight. Just by way of very quick introductory comments, I would just simply share, or maybe perhaps remind you all that I'm a native San Diegan. I'm a third-generation San Diegan. Jeffrey sent over a wonderful brief about Mira Mesa, and it just so resonated with my memories of growing up here and some of the early challenges with Mira Mesa, and then obviously to compare it with the great community that it's become. Obviously, there's still challenges, but a lot of that progress is thanks to all of you. During my time in public service, I've had the honor of sitting in planning group meetings for over 2 decades. I started as a representative of Congresswoman Susan Davis. And then, of course, many of you know I served 8 years on the city council. And it's through those experiences I've come to appreciate the work that you all do, the really critical work that you all do. You can imagine as a city council member representing over 150,000 people, it's difficult to be able to work on individual projects, to look at them with the intensity and the scrutiny that you all do. And the work that you do, hopefully, is felt like it's valued. I know from a lot of groups, it doesn't always feel that way. And I think some of Becky's comments in non-agenda public comment reflect that. But to the extent that council items reflect the community participation section, recording how the vote for each planning group was taken, I think is indicative of the importance of the role that you play certainly in planning and decision making in our communities. And I would just simply tell you that those 20 years I've spent working with community planning groups will not be forgotten when I become the mayor. I'll continue to rely upon all of you to help us tackle the big issues that are facing our city. And I look forward to talking about some of them with you tonight. But I think for the purposes of this group, my focus is on infrastructure and on housing affordability. Obviously, the two are deeply connected, and community planning groups like yourselves are important for vetting and reviewing housing projects, and also for prioritizing the projects, the infrastructure enhancements that help to maintain quality of life as we deal with new housing construction. I really want to applaud Mira Mesa, I think, for being a leader. You all have accepted very intense projects, projects that maybe other communities wouldn't consider. Many of your votes have been unanimous, and I think it's indicative of the kind of culture that you've built. And I want to applaud you for what you've done. I'm hopeful that you all can serve as real role models for the rest of the community as we grapple with these challenges of infrastructure and housing affordability. Jeffrey, with that said, I promise not to keep you a ton of time. And I know you have some questions. So if I may throw it back to you, because I'm happy to answer the questions that you have and any others that you all come up with.
All right, well, I sent you a few questions in advance. We do have some concerns about the direction the planning has been taking, some of which seem to be repeating the mistakes of the past. But one of the things, the first question I sent you is, this community has an FBA plan, and we basically have a list of projects in the community plan and a funding schedule based on the development that's expected. So one of the things that really has scared us about the Complete Community program is a plan to eliminate all of the FBAs and just have a single diff fee that would then be pooled for use throughout the city. Now, what we'd like to see is that our current FBA program is grandfathered until the projects that are in our community plan are completed. So we want to know if you would support that.
Yeah, so let me try and tackle that. And Jeffrey, again, thank you for sending the questions in advance, particularly when they're this specific. I want to give you real answers, so I appreciate you sending them in advance. So it's my understanding that FBAs were eliminated a number of years ago at the city. But I believe that with regard to complete communities, existing fees that have been collected have to be, from my perspective, they should be maintained for the projects in the communities where they have been assessed. I think there's a lot of legal reasons to do that, but I think there's also kind of a keeping promises piece of it that's pretty important. Jeffrey, I think the concern, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you kind of made sure or confirmed what I thought when reading the question, is a real concern about not making good on those particular projects, or that by having a citywide fee that Mira Mesa would see fewer projects completed. I think my observation has been that the city has been extremely successful at collecting these fees, but not always particularly good at actually deploying them and getting the projects done. And my hope, as you heard me say in my introduction, is to be able to address this infrastructure challenge, particularly in communities like Mira Mesa that are absorbing growth and need to have these infrastructure implemented. And I think, if I understand the intent of Complete Communities, is it's intended to make sure that more of these projects actually get done. And so it would be my hope that a model community like Mira Mesa that is seeing projects like, Casa Mira View and Three Roots and others that are coming forward or have come forward or are coming forward, that those projects are fully funded. And the potential to be able to take dollars that are not being expended in other communities and allow them to get done in Mira Mesa, I think is important. I think that's important for, again, making sure that as you accept and ratify and support these projects, that you get the infrastructure that's promised. And I think it's also important because it's reflective of the world that we live in. I live in Mission Hills. I work downtown. I do much of my shopping in the Midway area and in Mission Valley. And as a consequence, I think there is a citywide responsibility for having infrastructure, because I benefit from that in every neighborhood. I think that's probably true for many of us here. I guess in direct answer to your question, Jeffrey, my expectation would be that this would be on a go forward basis, not a look back. So the funds that are already in your community would stay in your community. That this go forward approach or perspective approach would help actually accomplish some of these projects that have been long promised but not delivered to Mira Mesa. And I would hope to be able to work with you as your mayor, and of course work with your city council member to make sure the projects in your community are prioritized and funded, again, reflecting your willingness to accept new projects in your community, something that isn't necessarily evidenced in every other neighborhood.
Okay, let me just follow up on one part of that. So the Three Roots project that was just approved will pay a considerable amount of FBA fees. We already have plans for what that'll be used for. Part of it will complete Carroll Canyon Road between that project and the freeway, which is necessary to get that work. Part of it will pay for a recreation center on that project site. and part of it will pay for 2 other parks. So the question is, can we count on that money being there for us, or will it get diverted to some other part of town?
Well, actually, that's a great question, and I think it kind of answered a little bit, but I don't mind getting more specific. On the Three Roots project, it's actually my understanding that builder is choosing to actually build the facilities rather than to pay the fee. In which case, I think we're where you'd want to be. If not, again, I want to say that those fees that are collected on now, Complete Communities has not been adopted. It sounds as though it's not going to be adopted under this current administration or this current city council. And so if this is, if I'm privileged enough to be your mayor, if this is something that we need to drill down and nail down for specificity, recognizing that this project has been approved, then let's make sure that we make good on the promises that were made as this committee ratified that or supported that project. And let's figure out how on a go-forward basis for future projects that we make sure that the dollars that are generated by these projects actually effectuate the infrastructure that's in your community. Again, I think the concern as I see it is literally hundreds of millions of dollars being sitting at City Hall that aren't being used for anything. And I think that that's difficult to justify when you every day see the lack of infrastructure in your community. I think we need to do better by neighborhoods, and this is a way to do that.
All right. If you're elected mayor, we will discuss that within the first week or 2 after you.
I would expect nothing less, and that's totally fine by me. I'm not a Complete Communities from my perspective is not perfect in its current proposal. And again, as I understand it, this mayor is not going to get it done. We will endeavor to make it better and reflective of what you're concerned about. And I do think, particularly, again, you got to keep the promises that you've made. If this is adopted in, say, sometime in 2021, things that were approved in 2020, you got to follow through on those commitments. It's just the way you should do business.
Okay, a couple more things about Complete Communities. It changes the way that parks are evaluated. Currently, we have a population-based acreage standard. So we have a certain population, the city tries to find that much acreage, and then they develop parks out of them. That's been extremely important for us in getting our parks built over the last 30 years since our last community plan was adopted. But the program does away with that in terms of a much vaguer point system that actually downweights the value of acreage and upgrades putting more things in parks. So the effect of that is almost certainly going to be to generate less park acreage and more, somewhat more highly developed parks than what we currently have. And the issue is you can only get park acreage when it's available. If you don't get it as early as possible, it's not going to be there. So what do you think of that program?
Yeah, Jeffrey, thank you for that question. And it kind of goes to what I was saying a moment ago. The proposal is what it currently is, but I see areas of improvement, and this would be one. I think that if you're doing a point system, adding parkland acreage should get the highest number of points, right? Having the most amount of space for communities to enjoy, I think is important. Now, the concept, as I understand it, and the intent behind this is to recognize that there should be a quality component to this and a programming component to this. And I think particularly for communities like Mira Mesa that have been long developed, and obviously you're going through a redevelopment process now where you're filling in things like old quarries and converting them into residential uses, that this is helpful in that it speaks to the quality of the programming, but the highest priority should be acreage. And I think that if the current formula doesn't reflect that, that's probably an area for amendment and for prioritization. We should always be looking for opportunities to add park acreage.
Thank you. Another issue is the way that traffic is handled under Complete Communities. In fact, I think this is already being done to some extent. They have changed we're used to looking at detailed traffic studies where you put in a project, you do a traffic analysis, you find all the intersections. And so we review those and we ask for mitigation for those impacts. But the new program instead uses a measure of vehicle miles traveled, which is a much fuzzier quantity and it doesn't tell you what the impacts of the project are going to be. So can you comment on that?
Yeah, Jeffrey, and the way the question that was sent to me suggested this was complete communities doing. This is actually the way the state is moving toward. And I'm actually a fan of this particular approach, and let me tell you why. And it goes right back to the last two questions with regard to, you know, infrastructure generally and parks specifically. You know, having some sensitivity and understanding what those trips are, right? We're all used to uh, ADT, but we're not to VMT. Well, you know, if it's a short trip, you know, if it doesn't necessitate the widening of roads, right, because you're just going from down the street, you know, by understanding that and being able to incorporate it into your community plan, is the potential for making sure that there are limited resources to build infrastructure go to where the need is. So, you know, if it's someone who's just going a mile for a quick, you know, errand of some kind, as opposed to someone going a long distance, you know, having that detail, having that specific information can help us have better decision making. And again, being able to say, okay, well, these are shorter trips, and as a consequence, we don't need to add a lane, we don't need to widen this road, we don't need to make a left turn pocket, etc. And the savings that come from that may be what allows us to get that park project done, that rec center completed, that habitat preservation accomplished. My hope is that we're being much more thoughtful stewards of the public dollars that we're entrusted with. And I think this is one way to do it. And it has natural benefits for addressing climate action and the needs that we have there. So this is not complete communities doing. The state is moving in this direction. And I think at the end of the day, what you're going toward is a much more high definition approach to understanding the specific needs for transportation mobility in your community. And it potentially could give us the ability to reduce project costs and use those savings elsewhere in your same neighborhood to preserve your quality of life or enhance it.
Okay, will they still be doing the same kind of detailed traffic studies that were done before, or are they only looking at the vehicle miles traveled?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I believe that the end result will be that you're going to have much more detailed analysis, because it's not just the number. You know, we've all familiar with the little black rubber things across the road that, you know, counts the number of tires that go by. And honestly, Jeffrey, in my world, that's kind of an analog version to data, right? What we're looking for is the digital version, right? Is that car going by having already driven 20 miles, or do they drive 200 feet? And the difference behind that, again, is the necessity or lack thereof for building another freeway connector, a lane widening, again, a left turn turning pocket. You know, those are the kinds of things that are not insignificant costs. And this is, I believe, what we're trying to get from VMT as opposed to ADT. Again, the difference between, is a car just happen to drive by, or did that car come from down the street or across town? That's the difference. And so I think, to your question, you're going to get much more specific traffic analysis, not less specific.
Okay. More information is always better. So as long as they keep doing both, that might work out. I'm going to combine these next two questions.
Okay.
The city's been looking for ways to increase housing density, to put more housing in various places. The statement from both the state and the city is that they're trying to put the housing density in areas that they call major transit routes. The problem is they have defined major transit use very loosely. So Mira Mesa Boulevard, for example, is considered a major transit route, and if you take the take the new regulations seriously, people can build high density units with no parking within half a mile of Mira Mesa Boulevard, which is practically the entire community. Well, Mira Mesa Boulevard has an occasional bus on it, and the plans are to have a few more buses, but that's all, and they don't go very, the only place you can really get to on a bus is downtown. There's just too many connections to anywhere else. So, so can you comment on that? Both the state and the city have been proposing things like this.
Yeah. Well, I always feel like the definition of this stuff is really important. And when discussing, what I mean by that is that there's a big difference between a quarter mile and a half mile, or maybe a full mile, right? There's a difference in my mind between fixed rail and bus. I think particularly when it comes to siting projects, if you're siting a project because there's a bus stop in a particular area, that has, in some of this legislation, has always left me a bit nervous because a bus stop, buses by nature are flexible, right? And the frequency or lack thereof is negotiable. I served on the MTS board for 8 years. During the Great Recession, we had to make many reductions to transit, and that wasn't anything we were glad to do, but the economy necessitated it. And a fear that I would have is that you construct or place a particular project because there's a bus stop there, and we have to have some level of commitment from transit operators that bus will be there for the long haul with the level of frequency, et cetera. We've worked on this at the state level to provide more specificity around that. The buses have to come with a particular frequency or with certain headways. But knowing the fragile nature of our funding for transit, this has always been a concern. And another thing that I've worked with my constituents on is recognizing the way you measure. A half mile, I think there's a lot of people who don't even walk a half mile in a day, let alone a quarter. But Jeffrey, how you measure that, is it as the crow flies, or is it how actual human beings may walk or bike? And I'm a big advocate for doing it as people would actually do that. This is relevant for my constituents in Pacific Beach, who are going to soon be serviced by light rail. But because of the 5 freeway, they're going to have to probably walk more than a mile in certain cases to actually access that light rail system. And so advocating for that kind of thoughtfulness, that kind of context sensitivity is pretty important. And so what I would say as you talk to transit-oriented development, I'm much more comfortable with a quarter mile than a half mile. I'm much more comfortable with rail over bus. And what I would hope is that as we look at this stuff, the kinds of projects that we can lockbox the transit funding for, some of you may know that some of our transit lanes, particularly the rapid buses that actually service Mira Mesa, particularly along the direct access routes on I-15, those have lockbox funding from our local sales tax measure. And as a consequence, their service levels are less volatile than the kinds of funding that we rely on state or federal partnership for. And again, I think that goes a long way to making sure that if a project is cited, that it's actually meeting what was promised to the community, that this project goes here because transit will be here. Well, that transit better be there for the foreseeable future and be able to more or less guarantee that. That's my vision of this stuff. And that's what I would hope that we could accomplish here in San Diego.
Thank you, Todd. That'll be the second thing we'll talk about if you're elected, because the regulations so far definitely do not show any big increase in transit for what's being planned. Okay, well, thank you very much. Is there anyone else on the planning group who wants to ask Todd a question before we go on?
And Jeffrey, if I may say, because we've talked about it from a housing perspective, from a transportation perspective, this requires partnership with SANDAG, as the constructors of our transportation system and MTS as operators of it. And I want to point out that I supported state legislation, Assembly Bill 805, that reforms SANDAG and essentially puts the mayor of San Diego in charge at SANDAG. Now, our current mayor doesn't choose to use that authority, which I think is curious because that means the mayor of Poway has that opportunity. But I want to be very direct in saying that because of the exact issues you're raising tonight, Jeffrey, I am fully intending to have a leadership role at SANDAG in order to make sure that as we work with communities like yours to construct housing based on the representations of transit, I'm there at that board with some sharp elbows to make sure we're getting our fair share. So this is less of a empty promise and more of something that we can actually deliver upon. So I just want to make that connection because it's not just about the city's planning department, it's also about SANDAG's transportation planning. And I hope to have a very influential role in that if I can be elected your mayor.
All right, well, thank you very much, Todd. We really appreciate you coming and addressing this tonight. So everyone.
My pleasure. This won't be the last time. Thank you all so much for your time this evening. And thank you again for your service to our city.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Barbara Bree is here. Barbara, where are you? There you are.
Here I am with my kitty cat, Warby.
Great. My cat usually crawls over me at some point during these meetings.
Yeah.
All right, so Barbara, so you heard what Todd said. I sent you the same questions that we sent him. As I said at the beginning, we allocated 15 minutes, but that's not very tight. We have a fairly loose schedule today, so if you need a little longer, that's fine. But we basically want you to address community planning, and I'd like you to address those issues that I sent you to talk to specific questions on.
Sure. Do you want me, I have all the questions right in front of me. Do you want me to start with the questions or just do sort of a 1 minute, here I am and who I am? And
Go ahead and do your 1 minute. Here I
I'll do
am,
my
who
1
I am,
minute.
and then you can go
Yeah.
on to questions.
Yeah, so I'm Barbara Bree. I'm running for mayor. I currently represent District 1 on the San Diego City Council. I ran for city council in 2016 after a 30-year career in the tech and biotech worlds because I was frustrated that the street in front of my office was being torn up yet again to have the same work done. And I got to City Hall, and quite frankly, what I found was a place with no accountability and no transparency, and where major decisions are made behind closed doors. And I'm running for mayor to bring accountability and transparency to City Hall, to make sure that our neighborhoods get the attention that they deserve, with a focus on leading an economic recovery, which is the only way we're going to be able to pay our bills. And I do have thoughts about housing and land use, and we'll get to those in the questions.
All right. Well, go ahead, Barbara. I could either read you these questions, or if you have them in front of you, you can just proceed yourself. Which way would you prefer?
If you want to read them so everybody can hear them. So,
All right. So these are the same questions that I sent Todd. So you have heard these. So one of the scariest parts of the Complete Communities program is the proposal to eliminate all of the FBAs and just have a single diff fee that's pooled for use throughout the city. The FBA is developed based on the community plan and the projects in the community plan and the development that's expected. And so it's the one way that you can guarantee that the infrastructure that's described in the community plan actually gets built. So we're very worried that the FBA funds could be shifted to other parts of town, and we won't be able to build the last of our projects. And what we'd like to see is our FBA program grandfathered until the programs in the current community plan are completed. The question is if you support that.
yes. So first of all, as you know, Complete Communities went to the Land Use Committee, where I'm not on that committee, but apparently there was a lot of discussion. There was no consensus, and it may be headed to the City Council. We don't know. It may wait for the next mayor and the new council, and there's going to be 5 new council members, and that's what I think should happen. I'm very concerned that such a major change has been rushed through during a pandemic, and I've heard this plan referred to as the Incomplete Communities Plan or the Completely Ignored Communities Plan. So first, I want to congratulate Mira Mesa. You have done a great job. You unanimously approved the 3 Roots project, which, as I understand, took a few years of negotiation with the developers so that you could get the community benefits that you deserve for accepting a high density project with 1,800 housing units. And I think that it should be mandated that the money that goes into the FBA should be used for your benefits. And I'm very concerned as we're going to be updating future community plans and promising communities benefits in exchange for accepting increased density. I think the money needs to stay in those communities. And that is something that does concern me about the current way the plan is written. So that's
a yes?
That's it. Well, yes, yeah. And I would actually sort of slow down the process if it doesn't pass with this current council. I mean, I will, if it turns out it's going to get to the council while I'm still on it, and it looks like it's going to have the votes to pass, I will propose an amendment that every existing FBA, all that money should be grandfathered in. But that would be not what I would hope to do. I would only do it because I think the process should be slowed down.
Right. Thank you. There are some other issues we have with this. As you say, this has been being pushed through rather quickly. There was a, there were some early versions of this that were put out for everyone to review, but the actual plans have come along and sort of gone straight to Planning Commission very quickly. So the second question is the change in the way parks are evaluated. Currently, there is a population-based acreage requirement, which has been very important to us over the last 30 years, getting our parks developed. That's going to be replaced with a much fuzzier point system, which is very likely to have the effect of downweighting the acreage and ending up with smaller parks and with more intensive use. Big problem with that is just that when you want to buy land for parks, the land has to be available, and so you have to get that as early as possible, or it's just not available anymore. So, like your comments on that change in the plan.
Yeah. So I think it's very important to add park acreage in areas where open space is still available or can readily be acquired. As I understand, you do have a shortage of playing fields and other park improvements in Mira Mesa. And so that is very important to me. In some parts of the city, we are doing joint use parks. I don't know if you're doing with the school district. I don't know if you're doing that in Mira Mesa in University City. Yeah, so you are doing that. Is there more potential for joint use parks in Mira Mesa?
Yes, there is some.
Because I think that going forward is a model. But I think what it all partly comes down to is that San Diegans don't trust city government. They feel that there's been a lot of duplicity, a lot of backroom deals, and so people are skeptical, and I think rightly so, of any land use proposal that comes out of City Hall. And I think it's important that the next mayor win back the public's trust. And, I'm all about accountability and transparency, which I do not see at City Hall right now, which I don't think has existed at City Hall for a long, long time. And I want to make sure that park decisions are made on an as objective a basis as possible, and that staff receives appropriate direction about the criteria to use in making those decisions. One of the issues is equity, that many communities south of 8 do not have the park facilities that communities north of 8 have. And a new nonprofit has been established called the San Diego Parks Foundation to start to work on this issue using private philanthropy, and to also go out and seek grants and other things. And this foundation, for example, is installing Wi-Fi at parks starting south of 8 and is doing other things to enhance parks that have in areas that have historically been underserved. But again, as I said, with the first part of the Complete Communities Plan, I think this also is something that needs some more thought before being rushed through.
Thank you. Another issue is the way that the traffic analysis is done, changing from calculating impacts at intersections and road segments and replacing it with a vehicle miles traveled measurement, which is again a much fuzzier sort of measurement than the kinds of detailed traffic studies that we usually evaluate. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, so actually I did hear Todd's answer on that, and I thought he made a lot of good points. The state, this is a new rule from the state, and I think in many ways it makes sense because, if you're getting in your car to go 1 mile to the grocery store or you're going downtown, it's two very, very different kinds of trips with very different implications for what kinds of infrastructure you're going to need to build. I think what's important, again, it goes back to trust. SANDAG is our regional transit agency, and I do plan to play a major role as mayor, but SANDAG unfortunately has a history of there's mistrust between SANDAG and the community, dating back to a ballot measure called Measure A, where it turned out SANDAG was a different head of SANDAG at that time, but they misled the public about the projected revenues. And did it knowing what they were doing, not by accident. So I think whatever we do going forward, there has to be a clear understanding of the numbers, that people understand how the numbers were arrived at, that they understand what the impact is going to be on their neighborhood, and what that's going to mean for future infrastructure decisions.
Okay, so you're understanding that we will continue to get the kind of detailed traffic studies that we're used to reviewing, and that the vehicle miles travel will be something added to that on top of that, or will it replace these these
So
studies?
I'm not sure if it will, well, first of all, I hope you get detailed information because I think that's the only way you as a planning group can make intelligent decisions about, approving major projects like 3 routes. You need to understand both the vehicle miles traveled as well as, what people are doing, the total number of trips. You need both to make intelligent decisions because
Okay. Well, hopefully that's what we'll get.
Yeah.
Again, it's not from the complete community plan, which is rather terse. It's not really clear how they're going to do that. So that's
that's what I was going to say. It's not clear.
Okay, so both the city and the state have proposed increased housing density with minimal or no parking requirements within half a mile of major transit routes. The problem is that the major transit route is very loosely defined and includes, for example, Mira Mesa Boulevard, all of Mira Mesa Boulevard, which basically just has a few buses on it, and there are plans for a few more buses, but that's all it will ever have. And there are no plans really to make it a system that can get to any part of San Diego. You basically can get from here to downtown. So what do you think should be done about this?
So as a council member, I have supported updating community plans in transit corridors like Mission Valley and the Marina District. The Marina District, is going to have the Blue Line trolley, connecting downtown to the UTC area. And, but I was one of 2 no votes on the council to totally eliminate parking requirements in transit priority areas. I saw the need to reduce them, but I didn't see the need to eliminate them entirely. So I'm very sympathetic to your concerns. And you're absolutely right. Transit, you don't have significant transit. You can get on a bus, and go downtown, and you can go on, but you can't go lots of places, and it's not fast. So, as mayor, I think we need to make transit a more attractive option by offering more frequent service, providing sufficient vehicle parking at transit stops, facilitating use of bicycles and other small vehicles to cover first mile and last mile issues. In the long run, I think our world is going to be transformed in the next 20 years with smart highways, electric vehicles, and autonomous vehicles, which is going to change everything. And I think today we're seeing lots of changes. It's hard to ask everybody who's at the planning group to raise their hand, but my guess is a lot of you are working remotely. You're not going to the office that you used to go to. And you will likely, I hope, be able to continue doing this if that's your choice, or you may do it a few days a week and go to an office some of the time. And this is also going to impact traffic patterns over the long run. And I think this is something that the city and Sandag should be encouraging going forward. There should be a major strategic effort to foster the development of a long-term remote workforce.
Thank you. The next question is, the state has proposed legislation that overrides local control of zoning and development. For example, AB 1279 includes this: in any area designated as a high resource area, which basically means employment or transit, this measure requires cities, at the request of a developer, to allow up to fourplexes in single family zones and up to 100 units per acre in commercial areas, and that those projects shall receive ministerial approval. In other words, they would not even come to the planning group. So what do you think of that type of legislation?
So this is a major policy difference between Todd and me. He has voted for state legislation that would eliminate single family zoning, that would essentially allow a developer to build 8 units on a single family lot. And he has voted for legislation that would take away local control of land use. I am against that. I believe that San Diegans should decide what gets built in our neighborhoods. And I look at your 3 Routes project, which if some of this state legislation had passed, you wouldn't have had the ability to negotiate with the developer to get the community benefits that you did. So I'm very clear that San Diegans should be in charge of what gets built in our neighborhoods. And as a council member, I have voted to update community plans along transit to allow appropriate density. We've made it easier to build a granny flat, also known as an accessory dwelling unit. We're now making it easier to do what's called a tiny home. And so I think there are lots of things we can do to provide more housing that families can afford. And I see a great opportunity with the pandemic for the adaptive reuse of commercial and office space as housing as more people work remotely. I mean, we're already seeing, offices being vacated as companies are downsizing because they realize they don't need as much space. And this is going to be a good opportunity to provide more housing, probably in areas that are near transit. And this is much less expensive than building a new unit.
Thank you. One last question. Community planning groups have been under attack from several directions for the past couple of years, as you're probably aware. So do you support the continued use of community planning groups to solicit community opinion on construction projects and their associated infrastructure?
Absolutely. I think community planning groups are the sort of the front line of democracy. You could talk to the community planning members in my council district. I have a really good working relationship with them. I respect, the work that they do. And actually, we just had a meeting on Zoom a few weeks ago to talk about the Complete Communities Plan and their concerns. So what's happening on the ground in your community in a way that the mayor can never know what's happening to the extent that you can. You live there, you work there, you may own property there. And I think that your voice is very, very important. And I know you don't get paid anything to do this. It takes a lot of time. You get flack from people when you don't vote the way they like. You put yourselves in a difficult position, and you do it because you care about your community.
Thank you. All right, so those are the questions that I had sent. Is there anyone else on the planning group who would like to ask a question? I see Craig.
Yes, I live 3.7 miles from the nearest major shopping area, 2 miles from one grocery store. Now, I will be 79 years old. I use a cane, and fortunately, I can still drive my plug-in hybrid, and I don't use much gasoline at all anymore because of the distances I do not drive. But what do you see as the solution to the problem of both an aging population and being able to easily access grocery stores, drugstores? I've lived in European cities over a period of time and used trams, but those cities don't occupy the same geography that San Diego does, for example. One needs something that can be on demand with a reasonable time interval. And I would say a reasonable time interval would be somewhere between a half an hour and a couple of hours, so that, I can go do the grocery shopping and I can bring it all home. And I don't have to worry about how to carry 5 bags of groceries one at a time using a cane. That's one of the issues that I find very concerning with the
Let's let Barbara answer.
traffic corridor.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, Craig, you bring up a really good point with the aging of the population. I mean, what you're talking about is going to impact many San Diegans. And we have to design a system that's going to accommodate for that. So downtown, we actually have a free tram service called Free Ride. It's called Fred. And you call it up on your iPhone and it comes to pick you up, and it takes you within a certain geography to your destination. And it's been very successful, and it's been expanded up to the Hillcrest and Bankers Hill area, which have the more density than Mira Mesa. So it's interesting that you bring this up because the blue line ends in my council district. It ends in UTC. And that area is considered the #1 employment center in the region. It's got, 3 hospitals, a university, Illumina, a lot of other biotech companies, and a few high-tech companies. And from the time I got to the council, I started working with the major employers in Sandag and MTS on what would first mile and last mile solutions look like. And there will be a variety of choices. And one of them will be tram services, some of which companies may operate for their employees. UCSD already does operate some tram service, sort of their own bus service in that area, but you have to have a UCSD card to get on. But I think that we'll see a combination of things like this. So it may be that a tram service could work in Mira Mesa. That you would know that it's only going to operate a certain number of hours a day. Would be, they're not going to operate between midnight and 4 a.m. Doubtful you're going to want to go to the grocery store then. But so I could see things like this. Also, Jewish Family Service does operate something called On the Go for seniors to take them to appointments, to the grocery store. And if you want, I could get you more information about how to use that. And you don't have to be Jewish. It's operated, it's for everybody. So.
I recognize there are some of these services, but I think that if they come into play and are universally available, some of the parking reduction will be much more tolerable because I can leave my car in my garage, use it only when I really need to, but otherwise I can call and go to the grocery store and get dropped back. But I think it's got to be more than the volunteer organizations, because they cannot respond as broadly as I believe the city government will need to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So actually, Jewish Family Service, it's a paid, they pay the drivers. It's not run by, On the Go is, very professionally run. But it's interesting, in Carmel Valley, there's a new project called One Paseo, and across the street, there's another shopping center called Del Mar Highlands. And at a moment in time, there was a lot of construction going on at both of them, and there was no parking available. And so they essentially ran their own tram services to bring people from, the neighborhood who lived too far away to walk to come and shop, or, go to one of the restaurants, or this was when we could still go to a movie theater. And I think it worked out quite well. So I think there's kinds of things we can think about in terms of public-private partnerships, working with all the shopping centers. I think there's a lot of things we can think about, and I think you raise a really good point. This is going to impact many, many San Diegans as our city ages.
All right, well, thank you very much.
It won't just be older people who will use it. In Carmel Valley, it was everybody, so.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Barbara. Really appreciate your coming to join us tonight and giving us your insights. So can I have a hand for Barbara?
Thank you all for inviting me, and I would be honored to have your vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on. You're welcome to stay around for the meeting if you want.
Yeah, I'll just mute myself.
Okay. All right, so we'll go on to report of the chair. I do have a few things to report. The community plan update survey that I think you all know about ended on September 30th. Because of that, there was no plan update meeting tonight since the city needed longer to evaluate that. I see Alex is here. Maybe he can update us when we get a little later. Three Roots project was approved unanimously by the City Council on September 29th, and they could start as early as November. The mail first assessment letter for 2 buildings at Headquarters Point, which is near Water Ridge. That's a process 2, and that will be coming to us for review. There's a notice of application for a conditional use permit at El Camino Memorial Park. That's a process 4. There's some fairly major changes proposed there. That will also be coming for us to review possibly as early as next month. And then there's a substantial conformance review revision at Sequence Drive that we will hear next month. The Mankind CUP amendments, I got a notice that a decision will be made on that. That one we've already reviewed and given our comments. And then there was a NORA for citywide traffic loops replacement throughout the city. Traffic loops are those those things they put under the street at intersections to count cars. And one of those is at Pacific Heights and Mira Mesa Boulevard. That's all I have for tonight. So we'll go on. So Alex Frost, are you here?
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, my video is not coming up for some reason, so I'll just be voice today. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Frost, project manager for the Mira Mesa Community Plan Update. As Jeff had mentioned, for those that took the survey, thank you. I've been analyzing that as we speak, actually, and trying to get a report together next 3 weeks. So we had 750 people that took the survey, over 80%, I think 86% Mira Mesans, either from Mira Mesa zip code or Sorrento Valley, and a lot of people living and working in Mira Mesa. In fact, a large majority. So I'm really excited about the turnout of the residents and all age groups and ethnicities as well. So this is a good representation overall. So hopefully I'll be able to share that on November 16th, I believe.
That's
our
right.
next meeting. Yeah, on Monday. So at that meeting, it will just be the results from the survey, and it will just be that.
Okay, so you're not asking for any approval of anything. You're just going to tell us what you found out?
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Alex? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
There's no new business tonight. Reports from elected officials. I saw a few of them here. Let's see. Luis, are you here?
I am. Can you hear me, Jeff?
Yes.
Hey, sorry about that. I couldn't get my video up as well, but a couple of quick things. I don't know if you guys saw, we did the Joe Coy proclamation, the famous Filipino comedian. We were able to recognize him in Mira Mesa for Filipino American History Month. So that was an awesome opportunity. He was great to work with, such a friendly guy, and it was great to recognize somebody that's been important to the community. Our next big community event in Mira Mesa is our annual pumpkin composting event. That's going to be on Monday, November 2nd. A couple of you guys have donated to that in the past, so we'll be set up over in the senior center parking lot. So anybody that's got leftover pumpkins from Halloween, drop them off there. We'll be there all day on Monday the 2nd from, I believe, 7 a.m. until about 4 or 5 p.m. in the afternoon.
Okay, any other questions, Luis? Pam?
Question, Luis. We plan to have, in addition to a pumpkin, a giant zucchini. I assume the vegetable racial equality at the composting, you compost those too?
I think we can make that happen for you guys.
Great.
Okay, so Luis, we did give you a couple of homework assignments. You were supposed to find out the current status of Sauk Park, as well as the status of Gold Coast and Parkdale.
So at our last committee meeting, we actually asked that question about Gold Coast. So that tranche of commercial paper is supposed to be coming up soon, and there's a couple of projects they need to get funded in there. I think they were looking at like I have the exact date on an email I can pull up for you guys, but that commercial paper tranche is going to pay for a lot of things in Mira Mesa, including Gold Coast. When I get off this call, I can find the information for you. And then as for the park, we recently submitted our CIP priorities for all of our upcoming projects in the community, and we included on there. So I'll check back in with Park and Rec if they have an updated timeline for that. But I'll get you that date for commercial paper. So that issuance is going to pay for streets, sidewalk repair, that kind of stuff. So once I get that exact date, I can give it to you guys. That's going to pay for a lot of things that are really important to us.
Okay. Don't forget Parkdale while you're at it.
You guys have tons of stuff for me.
Okay, thank you, Luis.
Hey, Jeff,
Yeah,
this is Joe. I want to read you an email that I received from James Nagelvort, the guy in charge of Public Works,
yeah.
on October 16th. He said, "Thank you for your continued interest and support of the Mira Mesa Parks project. And yes, now would be an opportune time to get these projects constructed. Unfortunately, just like many other organizations, the pandemic has negatively impacted our operations at the city and my department. The city, consultants, and contractors have all experienced labor and material shortages. We have had to shut down our offices on several occasions, and now we have over 60% of staff working from home. We have also unfortunately had several key staff to be infected by COVID. We are doing our best to keep operations running, but COVID has impacted our efficiencies. Finally, these are not the only projects we have been delayed due to COVID. Numerous water and sewer replacement projects, road servicing facilities, and others have been delayed. The three projects in Mira Mesa remain a priority for on our benefits to provide for the community, but also for the economic aid they would bring to a slowing economy. With limited resources, we continue to push these projects forward while maintaining a safe work environment for staff and public. However, please understand while COVID-19 pandemic continues, our ability to meet our mission objectives will be challenged.
So you asked what the timetable was. Is that what you got back?
These three projects were scheduled to start last May.
Yes, and that's the only answer you could get. Just
Yes.
room now.
Every month I get an update, and every month it's delayed by COVID. So I asked him, why is it delayed by COVID? And that is the answer he gave me.
Okay, Luis, are you still here?
Yeah, I heard everything that he said. Let me make a call tomorrow with that email, with that response. That's an issue.
If you can push this along, we would greatly appreciate it. I mean, in a lot of ways, is the best time to do things.
Can you forward that email over to me, Joe? I want to talk to the council member about that one.
Yes, I can. I included you on the email I sent requesting this email, but I'm looking at it now, and he did not include you on the back. Oh, maybe I didn't include you on it, but I will send that to you. Yes.
I would love a copy of that. I appreciate that.
Okay, so on the way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe and Luis. Let's see. I saw Diana Lara sign in. Diana, are you here?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'll be real quick. Last Friday, Senator Atkins' office, along with Assembly Member Todd Gloria and Congressman Scott Peters, were at Jewish Family Services distributing over 2,000 boxes of federal food aid for 7 local nonprofits. So we're very happy about the success of the event, along with we purchased masks and hand sanitizers. And I just want to, in the chats, I let everyone know to please email me. We're still working on EDD cases. Our office has closed over 1,000 cases since the beginning of March. So if you are still having any issues or know anyone in the community having issues, please give them my email. I'll be happy to work with them and any other state-related need. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Actually, I have one question for you. You talked about the census last month.
Yes.
Turnout is what fraction of the population actually got counted?
I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I will happily email that to you. And unfortunately, as I'm sure you're all aware, the census did get cut short very last minute. So it unfortunately ended the 15th instead of the 31st that was originally ruled. So that did, delay our efforts into getting everyone counted. But I will forward you those numbers specifically for San Diego and Mira Mesa.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Are there any other elected officials or government agencies representatives here?
Hey, Jeff,
Yeah.
I want to read the email that I sent to Mr. Nagelvorth, which
Okay.
I just read his response. Here's the email I sent. I am asking for an explanation of why these projects have been delayed. With the schools closed, it would be ideal to have these 3 projects going ahead since there are no children on site. To blame these delays on COVID seems bogus, since everything seems to be going on at the city without these delays. Any insight would be helpful to understand this delay. Thank you. And then I read the response that he gave me.
You should forward that letter to Luis also.
It's already on the way.
Okay. All right. Are there are no other elected officials reports? Okay. Are there any announcements?
Yes,
Go ahead, Joe. You need to unmute yourself. We're not hearing you.
on October 31st, which is Halloween, over at Hourglass Community Park, we are having a drive-through Halloween event, giving approximately 500 bags of candy to the first 500 people that show up in their cars, because we bought all this candy for Easter and we canceled everything. So we're giving it away for Halloween. So anybody that has kids, or even if you just like candy, please come by on October 31st from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. and get some candy.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Any other announcements?
Hi, Joe. Is that all stale candy now?
No, we don't use stale candy. No, we sent all the stale candy over to Scripps Ranch.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say that's all Easter stuff. So, you know, I'm talking about breaking a tooth or something. So
It's all wrapped up. Okay. Reports, not much to report from CPC. We did have a meeting September 22nd. There was a proposal for more visible notices on construction sites and a request for an ordinance to regulate street vendors. Neither of those have much impact in Mira Mesa, although the people they do affect seemed quite passionate about them. Our next meeting is on October 27th, and we don't have an agenda yet for that meeting. All right, Pam, Penasquitos Canyon.
Sure. We have not had a meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee, so I do not have a report officially there. However, Jeff and I continue enjoying to go hiking down to Woodpecker Land at the foot of the Camino Ruiz Trail, and it's a great place. While I've got the floor, can I put on my hat as to update folks on the Mira Mesa Branch Library? There will be a Halloween themed event at the Mira Mesa Library on Monday, October 26th. And I believe it's from 12 or 12:30. It's a midday event. It's on the Mira Mesa Town Council website. There is a visit by the library shop from the Central Library with a mural, a haunted mural, and it's an opportunity to dress up in costume and take selfies there Monday afternoon of that week leading up to Halloween. So, fun thing for the community at the library. The following night, Tuesday night, October 27th, our book group at the Mira Mesa Library that I volunteer as the facilitator are doing the stories of Edgar Allan Poe. You don't have to read a whole collection of stories. In fact, if you just want to come and listen in, do. But if you want to read a story and share, do you like The Telltale Heart? Do you like The Cask of Amontillado? Again, wonderful October theme, 6:30 p.m. until 8 p.m. on Zoom, and the information is out there on the internet.
Thank you. I have just one last thing. The town council is doing a, working with the San Diego Blood Bank, doing a blood drive on Wednesday. It will be set up behind the right right next to Raising Cane's, where that's being just about done. And so if anyone would like to give blood, you can sign up with the San Diego Blood Bank and we'll be happy to drain you. Okay, is there any other business tonight? All right, in that case, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good job, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Good night.